Hi, everyone. I'm JB Martin, and today I'm interviewing Brynn Bishop. Brynn is a trauma-informed intimacy coach, Tantra educator, and attachment rewiring specialist. Welcome, Brynn. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited. We start out in the beginning with the trauma informed and the tantra, but what I'm really curious more about is the attachment rewiring side of things. So can you tell me, how would I know I have an attachment issue that needs to be rewired?
Oh, that's a great question. Do you have any like triggers that just keep coming up again and again, like certain situations or certain way someone says something, or that just gets your goat and you have a really strong reaction?
Oh, for sure. I mean,
Right?
who
Who
doesn't when they
doesn't?
live in a family, right? I mean,
Who's human and doesn't have that?
right, exactly. There's definitely that. I think about the anytime that um especially in my 20s and 30s, whenever my sister would just say anything, it was like instantaneous. And my dad and I are on separate sides of our belief system. So,
Mhm.
and the irony is we're both fire when it comes
Uh-huh.
to those. So we kind of explode pretty quickly. It's
Yeah.
not pretty.
Yeah. So that's an indication that there's some, right, what happens when we get that activated or that fired up or shut down and frozen, whatever our reaction might be, um is that it's not just about the situation that's happening right now, but it's triggering an old incident from the past, or more likely a whole series of incidents that have some similarity, that's wired into our nervous system from often early on. It could be later in life, in interactions, relationships, experiences, but the core wounds happen during our developmental stages of childhood, when we are dependent on our primary caregivers for our needs for safety, for attunement, for connection, for warmth, for love, for acceptance, for protection. And also in, as we develop, our in supporting us in developing our own autonomy and sense of self. And what happens is that when our primary caregivers are not able to attune to us well enough to meet our needs well enough, because they don't have to be perfect.
Right.
So parents, you don't have to be perfect.
Thank you for telling us all that.
Yes. And repair is as much as important, being able to repair when there's rupture in the relationship, as not having rupture. Like, there's going to be rupture. We're human. We make mistakes. We get irritated. We get gruff. And so it's about how to navigate that. And what happens in early development is that when we are met well enough, we develop that secure sense of self. We feel comfortable and confident in our own skin. We have this kind of security within us, knowing that we're safe. People are generally going to accept us, and those that don't, well, they're not my peeps, and that if I need support, someone will be there for me. This is the experience that gets wired in. And so this is like, of course. And so there's an ease in coming into and out of relationship and intimacy. And that's the ideal, right?
Right. That's
So,
where we would all love to be, is that place where we're not trying so hard to get acceptance. Right.
right, having to prove ourselves, or saying, oh, forget it, I don't need that, I don't need anyone, I don't need that support, I can do it myself, and then get exhausted because we're carrying everything on our own shoulders.
Right. So for those people who like my story, right, of getting fired up with my dad, where do you start with even, the rewiring and repatterning process for somebody like that?
Yeah, great question. I think, well, it's interesting. Often, my clients have actually done years of therapy, of traditional talk therapy, and have a great understanding of where the issues come from, what is getting triggered, and why the pattern is there. And, but it hasn't changed. It's still there. And that's where the attachment repatterning work comes in, because it's going beneath the level of cognitive awareness, so that we would be in talk therapy and understanding and having a rational understanding of it. It goes all the way to the root in our nervous system, how it is wired in subconsciously, and actually rewires it at that level. It's this method is based on all of the latest research in brain plasticity and how we can actually lay down new neural networks where it's not fixed.
Right.
They used to think, right?
Right.
And also all the work on understanding how trauma, and in this case, it's developmental trauma, gets wired into the nervous system, and how to very gently and very efficiently release it without re-traumatizing, and actually unwinding that and laying down new neural networks of safety, of empowerment.
I love that you talk about how to do it in a way that doesn't re-traumatize, because I've heard of some people who've gone to like an acupuncture appointment, and they were doing a lot of healing work, and then ended up releasing so much emotion that it just kept coming for the next 3 to 4 days.
Mm-hmm.
Is that when you're talking about not re-traumatizing, are you is that something that like is an experience where somebody would say they would walk away and they'd have that release, but not experience that prolonged? Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So there's two things I want to say in response to that. One is that I'm trauma informed. I have training in trauma. I understand how it works. And if someone has a big trauma, or haven't done any trauma work, and there's a lot of trauma in their nervous system, I would refer them to a trauma specialist.
That's great to know.
Yeah. And then the second piece is, with the attachment repatterning, we're working very, like, I'm tracking how they are, their state of arousal in the nervous system or activation, and can guide that and monitor them, bring them back to resource if they need.
Okay.
But what typically happens in my attachment repatterning sessions is that, because first we build up what's called like this reservoir of resources, and that's anything that helps you internally or externally feel safe, feel at ease, feel that you can be yourself. So we gather these resources, internal resources, external resources, and we use the power of the mind to go back to early incidents where this first got laid down in the nervous system, and bring resources back to that experience that they didn't have access to then. So it's not just that they're reliving the trauma, they're not. And we're talking even just little traumas,
Right,
like
micro traumas.
Yeah. They're actually having an empowered experience of it. So we bring the resource back into that experience and play out that scenario with a positive ending. And so what happens is, in imagining it with all their senses, the brain can't tell the difference between imagining it and it actually happening in reality. So to your brain, it's actually happening. And in fact, that resource gets stored back with that memory when it goes back in a process called memory reconsolidation, so that now your nervous system has a different experience of that experience in the past, and access to empowerment, relief, safety, nourishment, whatever the missing piece was. And so typically when we go through an arc, and when clients come out of the session, the things I hear all the time are, I feel so much lighter. Like it's actually, colors are brighter. I feel empowered. I feel strong. I feel calm. So there's a shift, not only in the nervous system, like it plays out in the biochemistry, in how you feel in your body, like they breathe deeper, they're more relaxed physically. It's a very Gestalt holistic experience, and it's happening in a state of mindfulness. So it's not ordinary talk consciousness. It's a slightly altered state of consciousness, of mindfulness. So it's incredibly powerful. It was really the missing piece for me in my own journey of healing. I had done many years of somatic therapy, which was incredible and huge needle mover in my own healing and personal development. But the attachment repatterning was like the missing key that really shifted some of those really core internal patterns in terms of relationship.
Yeah. So tell me if I'm latching onto this the way you're describing it. I'm kind of imagining the reverse of what we talk about visioning, like imagining. Athletes are all taught, like, think about when you're if you're a basketball player at the free throw line, it's the last shot of the game, and how you're actually shooting the ball. It's kind of the reverse, in the sense of you're pulling back and taking everything you know today and applying it to your childhood, and saying, hey, I've got courage, I have knowledge, I have maybe a support system. Or I don't know, when you were talking about it, the first thing that popped in my head was Linus with his blankie, and like having your blankie there with you, as like, I've got comfort. At least that's how I'm imagining this. It kind of plays out, so that when it comes down to the situation, you're navigating it with resources that you may or may not have had back when you were 8, 9, 10.
Right. I'd say yes and no.
Okay.
So it's not as intellectual as that. It's more like the subconscious knows what's needed, and we're helping support your subconscious bring the resolution that's exactly right for you. So neither myself nor the client necessarily are like introducing those things, but I'm helping the client get to the place where their subconscious can inform them what's needed. And then, yes, they have that resource in that situation.
Yeah. So I'm hearing, because like talk therapy is so intellectual, it's so mind-based, and this is about really dropping down and allowing what needs to show up.
Yes. And it's very much trusting the organicity and the holism of the client. So that includes their body. Physical sensations give you amazing information. The body holds so much wisdom and information for us when we know how to tune in and listen to it. And the subconscious, like, I hold my clients as whole and complete, not broken. But and I'm not there as the authority. I'm there more as a guide to help them discover their own truth that is hidden from their consciousness by, all of the programming that we internalize. and
Right.
how we, just the beliefs that we make about ourselves and others in the world through our experiences.
Hmm. So if you're somebody who is very head oriented and not necessarily as attuned to dropping down, right?
Great question.
Right. How do you help navigate that with them? Because I can imagine I'm an engineer by training, and it's taken me a long time to get to that place of even understanding what you're talking about, right? Of being like, oh, I understand how to drop in and drop down, but it's taken a lot of work. So
Yeah.
how do you actually bridge that for somebody who is head oriented?
That's a really, really great question, Jamie. And I have to admit, this work is not for everyone. It really does require a certain level of self-awareness, of ability um, to notice one's own experience and be able to articulate it. So I do find that most of my clients, not all of them, but a lot of my clients have, been on the personal development, personal growth journey. Um, Maybe they have a spiritual inclination. Maybe they've had some kind of meditation practice or yoga practice. Often they've been in therapy. And or they, they journal, they reflect. There's a certain self-awareness that is really needed to do this level of work, because it is done in a state of mindfulness. And so one has to be able to access that state in order to benefit from this.
Yeah. So for those people who may not have done that work, would you say, but are curious, they're like, this sounds fascinating. Where would you tell them to start?
So even if they haven't done the work, but they have a certain a level of self-awareness, they could jump right in. If they're not at that point, I mean, there are so many incredible modalities out there that can help one come into a place of presence and awareness. So anything from mindfulness meditation to anything that helps you come out of the racing mind and into more stillness and more awareness, more pure awareness. So definitely meditation is very helpful. Certainly therapies, yoga. I mean, even some forms of other forms of exercise can be a meditation when you bring your whole mind into it and you're not thinking as you're jogging or weight training or whatever.
Yeah, you're actually experiencing
your body, your physicality,
body,
your breath, your muscles. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. For those people who have already kind of done that work, how long does it take to go through the rewiring? Is it, one and done? Like, can I come to you and say, hey, Brynn, let's just do one session and I'm rewired, or is it
That's a great question too. That's a great question, Jamie. Yeah. So this is good. I mean, obviously it's going to vary from person to person, depending how much work you've already done, how much healing, how much awareness you have of your patterns, how much charge is in the nervous system, and what your pace of metabolizing that is. I will say that probably I don't do one and dones because it's a process. It's not a magic pill. It is a process, and I typically will work with clients for like 12 sessions. Do a package of 12 sessions is my most popular package, to have enough time to really get in, because there's layers, right? So in one session, you can go through a whole arc on something, and that's one layer of the onion of your lifetime of these experiences.
Right.
Each time you go through it, you're building more resiliency in your nervous system. So part of the work, my clients do, part of the process is actually listening to the recordings or doing the process on their own in between sessions.
I was
to
just going to ask that
keep
question.
deepening those new neural networks and having more facility to go into those states out of the fight, flight, or freeze survival mechanism, which is the activation, into the parasympathetic nervous system, where your rest, digest, where you can relate, where you can be authentic, you can be yourself, you can feel at ease, you can feel confident, you can feel enjoyment and pleasure. And so the more frequently you do the process, and it might be just a 5-minute process, but if you do it every day, you're training your brain, you're training your nervous system to access that state. One of my clients calls it happy breaks. It's like,
oh, I love that.
yeah, because you feel so good after you do it. It's
Yeah.
like completely shifts your state of being. And then you can stay in that state of being longer and longer, the more your nervous system is like, oh yeah, that's a groove that I like. That's a groove I can access. I can go there during the day now when something, ruffles my feathers. I have more capacity to deal with it.
Yeah. So it's really building that muscle to make sure that, hey, I'm going through the process, and I'm not going to just, it's like going to the gym, right? You don't learn to deadlift once and say, all right, I'm done. I did it. I'm strong. It's really continuing to do that practice so that when you need it, it's there.
Exactly. I was just working with a client earlier this week, and we were talking about this very thing. She's working on developing more self-love and self-compassion, because she has a really harsh inner critic and really, second guesses herself and doesn't trust herself. And so we're really working on self-compassion. And that's exactly the analogy. Is like, this is a practice. You're building a muscle. And so that when you need it, when something comes up that's challenging, you have access to that part of you that can be like, it's okay. I'm okay. I got this. I got you. Your adult part can hold the activated, triggered inner child part. And that's part of the process too.
That's awesome. For those like practices between, how long is it? Is it, if your sessions are say an hour long, are you having them practice an hour long between those sessions? Or
no? So anywhere from like 5 to 15 minutes. Usually, 5 minutes is like what I have my clients do. It depends.
So it's consumable.
It's consumable. Yes, it's doable.
Yeah, it's doable. Like,
I have a lot of my clients that I have right now have a regular morning practice where maybe they do a little meditation or they do some reflection. And so they just incorporate it into the practice they already have. 5 minutes of, of repatterning, happy break. And so it's just, it's easy to build into their daily routine.
That's awesome.
The second piece I would mention too about the attachment repatterning, there's 2 aspects to it. One is this aspect of going back and repatterning early incidents. The other piece is experiencing in the therapeutic relationship, being attuned to in a way that most of my clients tell me, often I hear, I've never been so, like, I've never felt so safe and welcomed, and like I can let myself feel parts of myself I haven't let myself feel before.
Oh, so it's you've been able to create a container that really holds them and allows them to fully experience what's happening.
Yes. And I think actually that's the foundation that allows the other piece to be effective.
Right. Because otherwise there's a protection up. Yes. Like, I'm not in a place I can actually go. I can't go there.
Right. It's too scary. It's too overwhelming. I'll get swallowed. The emotions are too intense. I will never come out, And so, which that was one of my fears early in my healing process.
Oh, yeah, I've been there.
Yeah.
I remember,
And
I
so that's
remember
why
telling my counselor.
it's so important to have someone that can hold all of that and also help you ground, help you resource, help you not get swallowed, help you take just dip your toe in little bite-sized pieces that you can process and release.
Well, and what I love too is that you talked about earlier, you talked about being whole and complete, and like knowing that while you're processing this, you're still whole and complete. And having that piece be so fundamental, because I think oftentimes we think about going to therapy and it's about fixing. I got to fix me. I have something wrong with me. And it's what you're really pointing to is that there's nothing wrong with you. It's that we're just shifting some things in your experience to help you be more empowered.
Yes. And I think that's such a critical shift of perspective that's very liberating and empowering.
Yes, definitely. Well, thank you so much for having this conversation with me. I could probably talk with you for hours on this topic, and we could really keep digging and digging. But of course, we don't have time to do that. So how can anybody who's interested in learning more about the attachment rewiring or even your trauma and intimacy coaching connect with you?
Sure. So yeah, I mean, there's so many things to talk about. And maybe we can even talk again another time. But in the meantime, anyone can find out more. They can visit my website. It's conscious-intimacy.com. And I also have a free relationship wiring quiz they can take. Some people aren't at the place where they know what the root of these triggers are. And the quiz is a great place to start, just to get more insight into your own wiring, and maybe that of your partners can be super helpful. So I have clients too who they've done a lot of work, but their partner is new to this and they're wanting to help bring them along. And this is a great tool to open up that conversation. And so we can include the links below and people can just click on the links to access that.
Great. Well, thank you so much for talking with me today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I'm sure everybody will hear from us again.
Great. Take care.
You too.